Rake nervously shifted her weight from one foot to the other, frequently glancing at the time. Megan, we won't get the roses before 8 p.m., but I really have to go. My son is at home with his grandmother. If I'm late, there will be a scandal at home. Megan frowned slightly. Rake was an excellent saleswoman. In addition, she was a very kind and honest person, and keeping her there now, when the workday was already over, would feel almost cruel. After her husband's death, Rake had been living with her mother-in-law and her one-year-old son. The grandmother happily helped with the baby, treating her son's widow with understanding and care. The only condition she had for her daughter-in-law was that Rake should come home immediately after work. If Rake was occasionally late, it led to arguments at home, with accusations of neglecting her responsibilities to the child and spending time with unknown men. Deep down, Rake knew the elderly woman was genuinely afraid of being alone. She had lost her son, and now her daughter-in-law and grandson were her closest family. If anything changed in Rake's life, like a new marriage, she would move to her husband's place, taking her son with her. Rake felt sorry for her beloved mother-in-law and always tried to ensure she wasn't late for work. Megan, the owner of the flower shop, was aware of this and smiled warmly. Go ahead, I'll manage here. What's holding them up? Well, it's February 14th tomorrow, so there are many orders to fill. And there's a snowstorm causing traffic jams. Another snowstorm? Megan said absent-mindedly. All right, Rake, get ready to head home. Rake nodded, quickly putting on her down jacket and rushing out of the warm, glowing store. She stepped into the dark and windy evening. Left alone, Megan closed her eyes for a moment and sighed, inhaling the fresh smell of flowers. She loved being there. The store had been a gift from her husband for Valentine's Day. Megan remembered the first time Daniel had brought her here and asked, "Do you like it?" She had replied sincerely, yes. He had then said mysteriously, "Then this place is yours," as he handed her the keys. Confused, Megan had responded, "Daniel, thank you." "But you'll be fine," he had said emphatically. "You've been sitting at home for too long, Megan. You need to do something." "Daniel, you should have consulted me," Megan said glumly. "Ethan isn't even 2 years old yet. Have you thought about that?" "Yep. We'll find him a good nanny, and you can focus on the store," Daniel had replied. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Megan, you've become sad, easily irritated, and constantly in a bad mood. I can't remember the last time you genuinely laughed. I understand that you're tired. Your whole life right now revolves around Ethan, feeding, changing, and walking, and it can wear anyone down. But you're not alone. You're my wife and the mother of our son. We want to see you happy and full of life." Megan sighed, realizing he noticed her sadness and had found the shop to uplift her. Unfortunately, he didn't know the real reason for her bad mood. Her thoughts were interrupted by a man in his 50s, struggling to squeeze through the door with a huge box of flowers. "Hurry up and take it. I need to get home," he shouted from the threshold, making it clear he didn't intend to linger. An hour later, Megan's car sped through the blizzard along an empty road. Daniel and Ethan had gone to the country house, and they had texted Megan asking her to please buy a cake. Her husband had relayed their son's request, and now the passenger seat was filled with large supermarket bags containing a cake, croissants, fresh buns, and everything else her heart desired. Megan smiled briefly. Tomorrow was Valentine's Day. If she could get Ethan to bed early, maybe they could have a romantic evening together. Perhaps they were missing some romance. No, Daniel was a wonderful husband. But lately, Megan felt he treated her with a gentle, caring condescension more typical of a father than a loving partner. He never forgot to congratulate her on special occasions. He remembered what flowers she liked and consistently spoiled her with various thoughtful gifts. Yet, more and more, memories of their early marriage flooded Megan's mind. Back then, they had little, but each day held a special brilliance filled with joy. "Megan, I'm home," Daniel would call cheerfully. Megan's heart would leap at the sound. She would rush to the hallway to embrace her husband, inhaling his familiar scent and rubbing her nose against his cheek while laughing. Ouch! Prickly. For some reason, those memories now brought her a wave of melancholy. Megan frowned, as if struck by a sudden headache. She found it hard to adjust to these unexpected moments of sadness, even though she knew how to handle them. All she needed was to pull over and rummage in the glove compartment for her hidden pack of cigarettes. No one knew she smoked. The pungent, burning smoke didn't particularly appeal to Megan, but for some reason, it helped her. Or perhaps it was just an illusion of help. It provided a brief pause, during which she could tell herself, "Come on, you have a great husband. Your son is growing up so lovely, and you're not in need financially. You're not borrowing money before your paycheck. You have everything. So calm down." In romance? Passion? Well, they seem to be gone. But respect, loyalty, and care, wasn't that enough? Megan took a slow, bitter sip. Was she at fault? Had she spent too much time working? Daniel's gift, the small flower shop that had initially intimidated her, had become one of the best flower shops in the city. Megan had become so engrossed in her work that she hadn't even realized it. Initially, she had been afraid she wouldn't manage and hadn't wanted to leave the comfort of being a young mother. But the flowers provided solace. Each time she received a fresh shipment from the supplier, she imagined the fiery red roses waving at her with their serrated leaves and the chrysanthemums shining so brightly in their yellows, purples, and pinks as if they wanted to please her. Megan felt she couldn't let those beautiful flowers go unsold. Letting the flowers slowly wither away felt akin to abandoning a freezing kitten on the street. Megan simply couldn't allow that to happen. She had learned how to manage the shop, a completely unfamiliar profession, and she succeeded. However, it demanded a lot of time and effort. Perhaps that was why something intangible yet vital had faded from her relationship with Daniel. "All right, time to go." Megan finished her cigarette, imagining herself soon at the summer house, where it was warm, bright, and filled with tea and cake. Ethan would be happy. She turned the key to start the car, but it refused to start. "I don't know," she muttered, stalled in the middle of the night with no one around. Megan pulled out her phone and dialed Daniel's number. Busy, she thought, trying again. The call dropped. It was likely due to the blizzard. The car was warm, but not for long, as the heater wasn't functioning, and Megan didn't want to wait around for a ride. Who knew when help would arrive, or if anyone would even stop for her? About 10 meters away from the road, she spotted the silhouettes of houses in the darkness. A village, Megan guessed. She exited the car, shivering in the wind, and set off toward the village. "It's late now. Everyone is probably asleep, so I won't get any help. But maybe there's at least mobile coverage there," she pondered. The village was indeed quiet, though calling the 3 dilapidated houses a village seemed a stretch. They were shrouded in the sleepy night, with only one window showing a faint light struggling to shine through the snow. Megan approached the rickety gate, which was surprisingly open. She didn't hear any watchdog barking. "Well, what's there to guard?" she thought, observing the house's complete disrepair. Megan decided to peek through a narrow window to see who might live in this forgotten place. As she quietly approached the window, she was stunned by the scene before her. A child lay on the floor near the stove, tightly hugging a little dog. There was no one else in the house. Megan stepped up to the wooden door and knocked softly. After a moment, the door swung open wide, and a gray puppy tumbled out from under Megan's feet. At the same time, a joyful voice exclaimed, "Mommy." Megan looked up to see a girl of about 4 or 5 years standing before her, clad in felt boots and an oversized coat. The little girl's face froze in surprise and disappointment. "You're not my mother," she realized. "Are you waiting for your mom?" Megan asked, squatting down to meet the girl's gaze. "She'll probably be here soon," the girl replied, her voice laced with sadness. "She hasn't come for 3 days," she muttered, tears welling in her bright blue eyes. "We've been waiting." "Waiting? Why?" Megan questioned, concerned. "So you're not alone? Who else is at home?" The girl nodded at the puppy, wagging its tail at Megan's feet. For a moment, Megan hesitated. It was clear that the girl's mother wasn't coming back anytime soon, but she couldn't leave a child alone in such circumstances. "Aren't you scared to spend the night with Wolfie?" "We're not afraid," the girl shrugged. "It's just freezing, and we want to eat." "And where are your parents?" Megan inquired cautiously. "Do you have a dad or a grandma?" The girl shook her head. "We only live with Mommy." Megan introduced herself and asked for the little girl's name. "Chloe," she replied, breaking into a smile for the first time in a while. "Chloe," Megan repeated warmly, taking her phone from her pocket and dialing Daniel. The connection seemed to hold this time. Daniel answered immediately, asking where she was. "The car is stalled about 5 kilometers from home. There's a village nearby. I went for help, and there's this girl, Daniel. She's been alone in the house for 3 days. Hungry?" Daniel interjected. "Come here," he said, clearly concerned. "I don't know what to do, but we can't leave her here," Megan pleaded. Daniel seemed ready to object, but Megan continued. "Please come as soon as possible. We'll figure it out. My battery is dying. I won't be able to start the car without your help anyway. Just bring a thermos of tea and some sandwiches." "I'm waiting." She hung up quickly, not giving him a chance to argue. The entire time, Chloe was staring intently at this unexpected visitor. "Chloe, where do you think your mother might be? What if something happened to her?" Megan asked, puzzled by how a small child could be left alone for days. "I think she's out for a walk," the little girl said, looking serious. "What do you mean she's just walking?" Megan blurted out. "She has a friend who lives in the next village. When Mama goes to her, she doesn't come home at night. She leaves me and Wolfie soup and bread. But this time she's been gone too long. We've already eaten the soup and the bread." The girl's eyes were filled with sadness as she spoke. "Chloe, now we can go to my car. It's not far. I have fresh rolls and crust there, and my husband will be here soon to bring us some tea. You can stay with us tonight, and we'll take you back in the morning, okay?" Megan suggested, her uncertainty about the situation evident. "What if Mom comes and we're not there?" Chloe asked. "We'll leave a note with my phone number on it," Megan decided. "Do you have paper and a pencil?" Chloe hesitated before asking. "And Wolfie? I can't leave him alone. He'll freeze here without me." "Don't worry, we'll take Wolfie," Megan assured her. "Just bring the paper." The girl obediently fetched a sheet of paper and a stump of a pencil while putting on her hat and mittens. Megan wrote a note for Chloe's mother, explaining that she had to take her hungry daughter from the cold house. At the end, she included her phone number and placed the note on the empty table. "All right, sweetheart, grab Wolfie and let's go." She smiled at the girl. "Let's go." Chloe nodded, quickly scooping up Wolfie in her arms. In about 15 minutes, they were near the car. Unfortunately, it had cooled down significantly during that time. Megan placed the child in the front seat, wrapped her in a blanket she had retrieved from the trunk, and tried to start the car once more. The attempt failed. The car showed no signs of life. Watching Chloe enjoy croissants filled with custard, Megan nearly broke down in tears. How could a mother let her child get into such a state? What would have happened to Chloe by morning if Megan hadn't stumbled upon their house? Would she have survived, hungry and cold, in that house? Probably not. Chloe hadn't forgotten about her companion, Wolfie. She broke off pieces of croissant and fed them to the puppy, who happily gobbled them up while wagging his tail. Daniel arrived quickly, with a half-asleep Ethan in the back seat of his car. Ethan clearly relished the sudden night adventure. Father and son quickly dressed and jumped into the car, racing through the night and snowdrifts to save Megan. Megan stepped out of the car, trying to avoid making noise. Chloe, having finished her croissant and soft roll, had dozed off. Daniel hurried over to his wife. "Megan," he began loudly, but she quickly pressed a finger to her lips. He switched to a whisper. "You can't do it like that, Megan. If her mother shows up, she'll call the police. Then you won't be able to prove you didn't kidnap the child. You just wanted to help." "Daniel, I left a note for her mother on the table. I explained everything and left our phone numbers. But you can't just abandon a child. There's a house there, a cold house, with no food at all. Oh, Megan. Daniel sighed and wrapped his arms around her. What's this? An indignant squeak came from under Megan's jacket. It's Wolfie, she said with a mysterious smile as she unzipped her coat, revealing the curious puppy's muzzle peeking out. And you brought a dog? Daniel nearly groaned. All right, I'll charge your battery. We'll go home and figure this out. Megan woke up early the next morning, hardly having slept. They had returned home well after midnight and had to settle Chloe in for the night, finding her pajamas and a bed for Wolfie. She also tucked her son in, who was bursting with curiosity. Who is Chloe? He asked, refusing to let the topic go. She's a princess from a fairy tale, Megan replied with a smile. You see, she got lost and ended up in a kingdom where everyone is asleep. But Chloe isn't asleep, Ethan pointed out. Exactly, so we had to take her away until the king and queen woke up. And Wolfie will stay with us now. No, son. Wolfie guards the princess and must always be with his owner. And are you sure it's time to sleep? We're all exhausted today. Good night. Daniel looked at the sleeping girl. What are we going to do with her now? Megan shrugged. Let's try to go to that village tomorrow. Maybe her mother will show up. Not we. Daniel decisively interrupted. I'll go in the morning. We still don't know what kind of mother she is or how she'll react. The morning was gloomy. The blizzard had calmed down, and a special winter silence hung in the air, enveloping the pine branches and everything around, except for the sun. Megan thought as she watched Daniel's car disappear into the distance. Megan, Chloe's calm voice broke the silence. Good morning. Are you up already? Chloe, did you sleep well? No, she replied. Thank you, but Wolfie wants to go for a walk. Megan only just noticed that Chloe was holding the whimpering puppy in her arms. Clearly, he needed to go outside. Well, okay, we'll go for a walk with Wolfie together. We just don't have a leash. He won't run away, Chloe assured her. He never runs away from me. Hastily dressing the girl, Megan stepped outside and saw that Chloe was right. The puppy never strayed more than 3 meters away from her. Megan was amazed at how loyal and smart the little dog turned out to be. After breakfast, Chloe and Megan were drinking tea in the kitchen when Daniel returned. He walked in just as Megan was telling Chloe about how she once had a dog named Wolfie. Good morning, ladies. Where's Ethan? Daniel asked, trying to steer clear of conversation in front of the child. He's still asleep. Megan laughed, and as she caught her husband's gaze, she asked Chloe, Go wake up Ethan, please. Well, Megan inquired when Chloe left. Nothing, Daniel grumbled. Her mother never showed up. The note is still there. I knocked on the neighbor's door and asked around. He picked a cookie from the vase, twirling it in his fingers as he continued. In general, her mother's name is Laura. Once upon a time, she went away to study or work somewhere. She came to the village a couple of times, all fashionable. They said she had some rich guy, and then he left when he found out she was pregnant. Laura came back to her village, gave birth here, and then started hanging out. The neighbors fed and took care of Chloe somehow. Her mother is still wandering around here. Daniel, this is terrible, Megan whispered. What can we do? Daniel smiled, clearly busy with his thoughts. Think for yourself, Megan. We need to report the stray child to the police. That's all we can do for her. Daniel, I'm asking you to wait. No one is looking for the child. Let her stay with us a little longer. We need to find her mother and talk to her. It's easy to send the baby to an orphanage, but how will we get her back later? Have you considered that? We must think about the child first, Daniel insisted, trying to convince Megan to report the girl to the police. Megan couldn't articulate her reasoning, but she didn't want Chloe to end up in an orphanage. She felt deep sympathy for the bright, well-developed child who seemed wise beyond her years. Laughter erupted from Ethan's room, indicating that the children were getting along splendidly. After contemplating for a few minutes, Daniel nodded in agreement with Megan. The next day, Laura was still not home. The couple realized they were acting recklessly, but the little tender girl had blended so perfectly into their family that it felt as if they had never endured a night on the road or the cold of that empty house. And there was only Chloe, who had lived with them like a daughter since the day she was born. Megan closed her eyes and restlessly wrapped herself in the sheets. The memories that flooded back after Ethan's birth caused her almost physical pain. She could no longer have children. The doctor had told her not to despair. She had a wonderful, healthy son, and many others didn't even have that. He offered some reassuring words, but Megan hadn't heard them. Back then, all she could focus on was the fact that her uterus had to be removed due to complications during childbirth. She didn't try to understand what those complications were. Time couldn't be reversed, and the future that had once seemed so simple and clear now felt foggy and uncertain. She and Daniel had always dreamed of having 2 children, a girl and a boy. She regretted not telling him about her condition right away, a regret that grew heavier as time passed. The longer it went unspoken, the harder it became to confess. Confess felt like a strange word. After all, she wasn't to blame for what happened. Yet, she lived in fear that Daniel might bring up the idea of a second child. But as the years went by, Daniel never mentioned wanting a daughter. He appeared content, and they began to think that maybe 1 child was enough. Megan loved her son with a desperate intensity, and this strong maternal love was only intensified by the realization that he was her only first and last child. At times, she felt that the deep longing for what she had lost during Ethan's first year had finally subsided. It had given way to acceptance and the ability to find joy in what they had. And now, there was Chloe. Megan listened closely. She heard a quiet, dry cough coming from the living room. Chloe was sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Megan placed her hand on the little girl's forehead. There was no need for a thermometer. It was clear that Chloe had a high fever. Daniel! Megan rushed into the bedroom. Wake up! Chloe has a fever. Daniel tossed aside the blanket. I'll go to the pharmacy now. Pharmacy? Megan exclaimed. She's been sitting in the cold for 3 days already. She needs to see a doctor. Take her to the hospital, and I'll visit her village again, Megan insisted, gathering Ethan as she prepared to leave for Laura's house. A woman around 30 opened the door. It was Laura. My name is Megan. Did you read my note? Megan asked. The woman seemed bewildered, as if she didn't immediately understand what was being said. Come in. So you took Chloe with you? Laura said, sounding surprised. I was waiting for your call. Why? Megan asked, feeling confused. Laura shrugged, clearly irritated. Did anyone ask me if I wanted her? Megan stared at Laura, taking in her appearance. Once, Laura had been beautiful, but that was no longer the case. Her once thick, golden blonde hair now hung in careless tangles. Her face appeared swollen, and dark bags under her eyes revealed her struggles. The neighbors hadn't been lying. It was evident that she had been drinking. Just then, Megan's phone chirped with a new message. It was short and to the point. Chloe is being admitted to the hospital. Pneumonia. Megan looked back at Laura. Laura? Chloe is in the hospital. My husband just sent me a text message. She has pneumonia. Let's go. Where? Laura asked, her voice lacking urgency. To the hospital, of course. I'm driving. I'll take you. Megan noticed Laura's distracted smile as she turned away. Laura! Megan didn't realize she was shouting. Chloe is your daughter. She's in the hospital. Let's go. Stop standing there. I won't go. I don't want to, Laura said quietly, her voice calm. What? Megan felt like she was running out of air. She fumbled with her jacket, her fingers struggling to unzip it. Okay, I understand. Listen, if you don't want your daughter, just give her to me. I can see you need money. How much do you need? Laura didn't respond. She simply closed the door, leaving Megan and Ethan outside. For the next 2 weeks, Megan and Daniel visited Chloe in the hospital every day. Finally, the little girl was almost fully recovered. Still, there was no sign or word from her mother. The doctor explained that he needed to inform the police and the guardianship authorities. After Chloe is discharged, she'll go to an orphanage, he said. But maybe we could take her home right away. Megan held Chloe close, who was dozing in her arms. A child is better off in a family than in an orphanage. I understand your feelings, the chief doctor replied. But there are laws we cannot break. Maybe you will be able to adopt her later? Okay, thank you, Megan said gently, putting the sleeping child in bed and covering her with a blanket. My husband and I will prepare the documents for adoption. Good luck to you, the doctor said with a warm smile. On the way home, Megan thought about the conversation she needed to have with Daniel regarding Chloe's future. It seemed obvious that the girl would stay with them, but now they needed to decide how to proceed. Daniel was in agreement. Perhaps he still hoped they might have another child of their own someday. Daniel, Megan started. They're going to send Chloe to the orphanage. I would like us to adopt her. Daniel finished her thought, looking surprisingly unfazed. He probably had already made his decision. I agree. Once the guardianship and police sort things out, Laura will likely lose her parental rights. Of course, Megan replied. But I need to tell you something else. She looked at him carefully. After Ethan, I know everything, Daniel interrupted, pulling her closer. I knew from the beginning, but please don't ask me how I found out, okay? It doesn't matter, Megan whispered. What does matter then? She muttered. Because I can't, he said softly. And that doesn't matter either. The only thing that matters is that I love you. We have a happy family. We have a son, and soon we'll have a wonderful daughter. Daniel smiled and hugged her tightly. A year passed. The morning sun streamed through the thin tulle curtains. Megan smiled without opening her eyes, feeling the rays tickle her eyelids. The front door slammed as Daniel returned from the city. The bedroom door swung open, and a grown-up, shaggy puppy bounded into the room, followed closely by Chloe and Ethan. Mom! Chloe exclaimed, climbing onto the bed to hug Megan. We're going skiing! We're going skiing! Ethan shouted, bouncing on the springy mattress. Megan laughed, embracing both her son and daughter. Daniel's cheerful voice rang out from the hallway. I'm home! As she held her husband and children close, Megan felt like the happiest woman on earth, convinced she had everything she needed for perfect happiness. Chloe, whether because of her age or perhaps her psyche, had decided to erase her past from her memory. She truly believed that Megan, Daniel, and Ethan were her family. She didn't remember Laura, though sometimes Laura appeared in her nightmares. But the girl did her best to banish those dark dreams, knowing she now had only one family, a family that loved her unconditionally and would never betray her.